Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. So, Aquaman 2, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is officially out in theaters, and I have had the chance to go see it already, which means I have officially seen every single DCEU movie that has ever released and will ever be released. So, that being said, I think it is time to go ahead and rank them. So, we got 16 movies here. Let's dive right into this. Alrighty, coming in dead last place in 16th, we are going with Wonder Woman 84. Personally, I was not a big fan of this movie. I think Gal Gadot's performance as Wonder Woman is once again relatively decent, but they did a lot of really questionable things with this movie. I think that Maxwell Lord being the main villain works relatively well, and I think that Pedro Pascal as Maxwell Lord was a good casting decision, but overall, what they decided to do with his character was really weird. They introduced the Stone of Dreams, and they were like, hey, you're going to become the Stone of Dreams, which I still think is one of the biggest blunders in the history of comic book movies, and overall, there was just a lot of sequences that don't make sense, and the final battle, instead of being some kind of battle, is just Wonder Woman talking, to a room full of cameras and being like, you guys need to renounce your wishes, and nobody should wish for anything because it's gonna make you selfish or whatever, and it's a really weird movie. There's a lot of things that happen in it that just, like, continuity-wise don't really work with the movie. I think that the cheetah in this movie is not great, incredibly underwhelming. She looks really terrible with the CGI, and I really, really wish I could have liked this movie, but it's a sequel to one of the best DC movies, and it is incredibly, incredibly underwhelming. Coming in at number 15, we have Joss Whedon's Justice League movie. Personally, I think that this movie was fun to watch in theaters, and as somebody who was relatively young when this movie first came out, I didn't really see a lot of the problems with it, but the more you rewatch it, there's a lot of flaws with it that don't really work very well. Batman making jokes is a little weird in this movie. There's a lot of things like that that are just totally off. I think that aside from sequences like Aquaman sitting on the lasso of truth and giving his little, like, motivational speech, the entirety of this movie is just so underwhelming and incredibly lackluster in comparison to Zack Snyder's Justice League movie that watching this movie ever again kind of just feels like a bad decision. I feel like there's a lot of really bad CGI in this movie. There's a lot of really lackluster action sequences, and overall, the Justice League doesn't feel like the Justice League or like a team in the majority of this movie. Coming in at number 14, we have The Flash. Personally, I think that this movie is incredibly disappointing, and I think that this movie just happened to be one of the most overhyped superhero movies of all time, and I'm sure it probably would have been a little bit better and higher up on my list had I not had this insanely high expectations for it, but we have people like James Gunn saying it's the best superhero movie they've ever seen. We have people like Tom Cruise saying this is one of the best superhero movies they've ever seen, and I go and I watch it, and it's terrible. I think that The Flash is one of the most interesting characters in the comics, and he has one of the biggest rogues galleries in all of comic books. It's like the Batman and Spider-Man have, like, the two biggest rogues galleries, and then you got the Flash, who has his entire rogues gallery that's an ungodly amount of people, and there's so many cool villains they could have picked to be the villain of this movie, and they end up going with nobody. They end up going with, like, a weird time-altered variant of himself who's in the movie for about 2 minutes, and it's weird because the main villain is in the movie for about as long as, the cameos at the end of the movie that are completely useless, that takes us out of the film, that completely ruins the third act. I feel like this movie did a really good job of building up, like, hey, there's this big climactic thing that's going to happen. Barry is in this universe. He's in it because his mother's alive. There's a lot of things that are kind of going awire because Barry messed with the timeline and he probably wasn't supposed to. We're getting up to there's going to be this huge battle. They're going to fight Kryptonians. It's going to be really cool. And then they just start time looping and they go back in time to try it again and try it again and try it again and try it again. And then they immediately just, like, freeze time. They stop. They have a conversation. They're like, this isn't going to work. And I feel like it cuts off way too soon. If we got to see the battle of them against the Kryptonians, like, another, like, 10 or so times, maybe not 10 because that would have been a lot, but if we got to see it about 5 or 6 or 7 more times and we got to see them draw it out a little bit more, I would have enjoyed this movie a lot more. But in my opinion, it's building up to this climax the entire movie, and it's building, and then it basically cuts us off right before we get to the climax, and then we never really get a satisfying conclusion because we just get a giant cameo fest, and we get to see Nicolas Cage as Superman, which I'm so sure so many people wanted to see. We get to see Adam West's Batman. We get to see a bunch of old versions of these characters who, not to be that guy, I don't think anybody really wanted to see. And the CGI in this movie was relatively terrible, and it's insane to me because this movie has been in development for almost 10 years, and they couldn't get the CGI right, they couldn't get a script right, and it blows my mind because I was expecting my thing that I wasn't going to like about this to be the acting, and I think the acting is the best part of this movie. Coming in at number 13, we have Aquaman 2, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. This is another one that just suffers from maybe my expectations were a little bit too high. I was really hoping that this movie would be on par with Thor: The Dark World, and for some people, you're gonna hear, "Oh my God, Thor: The Dark World, that's a terrible MCU movie." That is one of my favorite MCU movies to rewatch because it is absolutely hilarious. And I was kind of hoping this movie would be similar to it because in that movie, there's a lot of really great brotherly moments where Loki and Thor are messing around and they're goofing around and they're doing these adventure things, and they are so good as brothers. And in this movie, that's what the trailers are selling us on. They're selling us on Patrick Wilson and Jason Momoa are going to be brothers, and they're going to be messing around with each other. They're going to be goofing around. They're going to be picking on each other. They're going to be doing cool action sequences and stuff together. And the majority of this movie, it's building up to that. It's building up to that. It's building up to that. We get it for about maybe 30 minutes, and then it's just like more. Just here's this random exposition dump. Here's this exposition dump. Here's this exposition dump. Oh, what's his face? Black Manta is still mad about something that happened in the first movie, and it's so lackluster. Like, there is terrible pacing, terrible editing. A lot of scenes feel like they are missing stuff, and a lot of the scenes cut off abruptly. And I just feel like this movie felt like they really just wanted to throw together all of the footage that they have and just say, let's hope people enjoy this. And it's very, very disappointing. Coming in at number 12, we have the original Suicide Squad movie. Personally, I think that this movie is a little bit better than a lot of people give it credit for. I enjoyed the movie. I think that there's a lot of cool action sequences that work really well. I think El Diablo is one of the coolest characters that DC has ever had. And I really wish that we got David Ayer's version of this movie, because he's gone out and said a lot of times that he really wished he got to make the movie that he really wanted to make. Because for people who do not know the stories about what happened with this movie, this movie was directed by David Ayer. They had a really cool story. It was very going to be melodramatic. There was going to be a lot of very depressing stuff in it, and there was going to be a lot of it wasn't going to be a triumphant superhero movie. It was going to be a superhero movie that dealt with characters that are struggling with very, very personal issues. There's going to be a very toxic relationship with the Joker and Harley Quinn. There's going to be a lot of darker moments with some of these characters who were depressed, and they kind of felt like now that they have this bomb in their neck, they feel free, but they also feel free mostly because they kind of realize that their life is kind of meaningless now, and they don't really need to. I don't know. It was going to be a really deep movie. And basically, they released the trailer, and it was set to Bohemian Rhapsody, and it had a lot of fun music going on in it. And everybody online freaked out. They were like, "Oh my God, this is going to be such a cool movie. It's going to be epic. It's going to be action-packed. It's going to be so fun and uplifting and stuff like that." And DC very quickly realized, our movie isn't really uplifting and fun like that. People are going to be disappointed by this movie. So they hired the company that edited together the trailer to rework and re-edit together the entire movie. And that's why there will be 5-minute sequences where they play 6 or 7 different songs, and every single one of them feels really out of place. And then there will also be moments where it feels like this character should be having a really deep character moment right now, but instead they're joking around and they're, just shooting a bunch of CGI nothingness. And overall, I really wish we got to see what David Ayer's original version of this movie was, but because we won't, it's going to be a little bit lower on this list. Coming in at number 11, we have another movie from this year. We have Shazam! The Fury of the Gods. Personally, I thought that this movie was actually a whole lot of fun. I enjoyed this movie. I thought that the comedy in it worked really well. I think that the family dynamic, once again, worked really well. I think that the actor who plays Freddy absolutely killed it in this role, and I really enjoy some of the stuff that they did with this movie, with the world building. I think that the fact that they were let's dive into some magical stuff, but we don't want it to feel too derivative of other things. So instead of trying to make it feel like Doctor Strange magic, it felt more like Harry Potter magic. They had a library with flying books. They had a room full of floating doors and stuff like that. And it felt really cool and really magical in a sense that we haven't felt in other movies recently. I think that this movie had an incredible action sequence at the end of the movie that nobody ever talks about. And it really does make me sad, because a lot of people will talk about oh, the product placement. There's Skittles everywhere. And oh my God, these kids are making jokes like they're children or something, because they are. Right? I think that a lot of people give this movie way too hard of a time when it's just a fun time at the movie theaters. And like I said, the epic action sequence at the end of the movie, we get Shazam flying around, shooting laser beams at a giant wooden dragon there are some beautiful, beautiful shots in that sequence where it's storming, there's lightning completely surrounding him, and he's punching the dragon while there's literally lightning strikes and stuff behind him. It's slow motion, and oh my god, there were some really beautiful sequences in this movie, and a lot of that gets overlooked because, like, oh, there's a Skittles product placement, oh, there's a bunch of, superheroes that act like children, and it bothers me because, yeah, they're children who get superpowers. That's the whole point. But yeah, I thought this movie was good, and I don't think it's as good as obviously the next couple of movies on the list, but I think that it deserves a little more credit where credit's due. Coming in at number 10, I have watched this movie probably about 7 or 8 times, and I still don't get it. I am talking about Batman versus Superman. Oh, have you seen the unlimited version? Yeah, it's still just a giant conjumbled mess. They take characters from the comics and basically just decide that they're completely different characters. Jimmy Olsen showing up in this movie, dying, becoming an FBI agent, whatever the hell they were doing with Jimmy Olsen. Why? Like, I personally don't have any problems with Zack Snyder going around and making his own different version of these characters, but at the same time, it gets to a point where it's like, you're not even using the characters. You are doing whatever you feel like doing and just using popular IP to make this movie whatever you want it to be. And it really bothers me because, like, his Superman never felt like Superman. His Batman was always a little bit more dark than Batman's supposed to be. Batman has his one rule, which is not killing people. And in this movie specifically, Batman is just so ticked off at Superman that he is basically just like hunting Superman down. Like, Superman is like this absolutely evil force. And like, I understand why. But at the same time, Batman is just terrible in this movie for no reason. He's so evil, he's so violent, he's so shoot now, ask later. And that's not very Batman-like. And the big thing that bothers me about this movie is all the conflict in it is so, like, manufactured, it's not even funny. Lex Luthor's inclusion in this movie feels so unnecessary. And the fact that, like, they're trying to make Lex Luthor be this genius character who, like, orchestrated all of these things when every single part of the plan relies 100% on, super coincidental things, it's stupid. It's ridiculous. It's not a great movie, and I'm tired of people saying it is. Coming in at number 9, we have the JSA movie. That's right, I'm talking about Black Adam. Personally, I still have no idea what the hell Dwayne The Rock Johnson was thinking about this. So, forever ago, it was, decided that Dwayne The Rock Johnson was going to be playing Black Adam. And since that day, I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. That's going to be great casting. He's going to do so good in this role. He became kind of a producer for the movie. He helped write some of the parts of the movie. And he did a lot to change his character and make his character the way he wanted his character to be, which was not Black Adam. Basically, this entire movie, Black Adam is basically just Shazam. But, not white. And it really bothers me because in the comics, Black Adam is a dictator. He's somebody who's ruthless. He's somebody who was enslaved for thousands and thousands of years, and he's always wanted to get back at humankind, so he becomes a dictator. He becomes somebody who's just filled with rage. He's incredibly evil, and in this movie, they try to make him like a campy little, like, funny vigilante, and the only thing that he does differently is he kills people, and it drives me insane because, like, that's not Black Adam. That's not who Black Adam is. If it wasn't for the fact that this movie had Hawkman, who is incredible, and it had Dr. Fate, who is incredible, I would have seriously disliked this movie. And I do think that this portrayal of Black Adam was pretty terrible. Coming in at number 8, we have the Birds of Prey with the Fantabulous Emancipation. One Fabulous Harley Quinn or something like that. Incredibly long title. And I will admit, I rewatched this movie for this video because in the past, I remember not liking this movie, but I've only seen it a single time. And it's the only one on this list that I have seen only a single time, aside from Aquaman 2, which just came out in theaters. And so I was like, I'm going to rewatch it. And rewatching it, I realized this movie actually is a whole lot of fun. I think that Harley Quinn's character works incredibly well. And I didn't really realize this, but like, between the 2 Suicide Squad movies and this movie, Harley Quinn kind of has like a trilogy of character growth, and her character development in this movie is really good. I think that Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn was incredible, and the fact that they let her lead her own movie basically with this was fantastic. I think the fact that she kind of has like fourth wall breaking type elements while she's doing the storytelling for this is fun. I think that Ian McGregor as what's it called? The Black Mask is really cool, and he's a very underrated villain who we don't get to see in live action much, and his performance for that was great. And I really like the Canaries. I think that they did a really good job creating this team and making it like come to fruition in a relatively like natural way that felt cool and didn't feel forced. And I think that overall, this movie is very overhated. But I think the big thing is it's just not super rememberable. Rememberable? I stand by that. I know it's memorable, but I said rememberable, and we're sticking with that. Coming in at number 7, we have the original Shazam movie. This movie, in my opinion, is incredibly good, and it's a lot of fun, and all of the Shazam stuff with it works really well. The whole, concept of, oh my god, there's this little teenage kid, and he gets the powers of a superhero, and he can transform into a superhero, and he's going to go around and goof around, and they're going to make a YouTube channel showing off his powers, and he's going to go dancing around, and he's going to try to save the day, but not really know how to, because he's a kid, and he's an idiot, and he doesn't know how to use his powers yet. He's going to go buy beer, because he looks like an adult now. There is so much fun stuff in this movie that I really, really love and enjoy. The only problem that this movie has is it tonally doesn't work really well. There's sequences where he's the kid and he's goofing around and he's doing, kid things, and he's actually a lot darker than Shazam is. Like, Shazam feels like a completely different character. It almost seems like the two actors who played Billy Batson and Shazam never actually interacted and discussed what their character is going to be like, because on the one hand we have Billy Batson, who's trying to find his mother and figure out why he's an orphan and figure out why he's been running from foster home to foster home, and it's a very dark and emotional sequence. And then on the other hand, we have Shazam, who's just goofing around 24/7 and never takes anything serious, and he's also just like, he plays it so far dumbed down, and it bothers me because in the comics and in the animated series, Shazam's a pretty smart character. And sometimes we're watching these movies, it's kind of not great. Also, the 7 Deadly Sins, not great CGI. That's kind of a running theme for the DCEU a little bit. Coming in at number 6, I might get hate for this, but Man of Steel. Personally, this is not my Superman. And that's the main thing that I'm going to say about this movie. Rewatched it a couple of times. Making Superman dark, in my opinion, does not work really well. There's a lot of sequences in here that are just absolute blunders. The sequence where Pa Kent is dying in a tornado or whatever, and he just like looks at him from really far away and he's like, no, why? Like, your son can come and save you, let him save you. There's no reason to hide his identity. There's no reason to, die in that moment. But for some reason he does. And, that makes sense. There's a sequence where he's at a bar or whatever, and there's a trucker who's hitting on this woman. And then Superman goes outside and he completely destroys the dude's truck and does like some absolutely terrible things that, like, once again, Superman would not do. This movie ends with Superman killing somebody. The final sequence with him and Zod, where they're going around completely destroying Metropolis, it just feels incredibly tone deaf, and I feel like they did not understand the character of Superman at all, and it really bothers me because a lot of people, this is their Superman. This is when they think of Superman, they think about Henry Cavill's Superman, they think of the Man of Steel movie, and it's depressing because it's not the hopeful and optimistic Superman that he's supposed to be. He's not like the basic, picture that you imagine when you think of a superhero, and I'm not a huge fan of this movie. Coming in at number 5, some people might call me biased for this, but I got Blue Beetle. Personally, I really love this movie, and I think that you kind of got to realize that this movie was supposed to be a streaming service only movie, and it was supposed to take place in a universe that doesn't exist anymore, because for people who do not know the backstory behind this, the Batgirl movie was supposed to take place in a new universe that was supposed to happen post Flashpoint, where there was going to be a universe where Michael Keaton was Batman Beyond, and there was going to be a couple of other little differences like that, and it was going to be basically a rebooted DC universe, and Batgirl was going to be in it, and this is where this Blue Beetle movie was supposed to take place, because HBO Max was kind of getting like almost their own like DC universe, Elseworld or whatever, and so that started to happen or whatever. Then Batgirl got canned, but they were still told that they were originally going to be in that world, so they didn't really know what they could reference, what they couldn't reference, and so it ended up being like a really awkward standalone movie that I think actually almost works in its favor, because it doesn't feel like it takes place in a different superhero world. It kind of feels like its own thing, which I think is great. It's super contained. It's really nice. And one thing that I really liked about it is I told people for the longest time, for people who had no idea what the Blue Beetle movie was and did not care what the Blue Beetle movie was, I said, it is DC's Spider-Man. They are going to have a really, really fun coming-of-age movie. It's going to be a young superhero who's going to be quippy, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be great. There's going to be good comedy. I mean, for crying out loud, George Lopez is one of the lead roles, basically. And yeah, it was great. It was a whole lot of fun. It was everything I wanted in the movie. There's a lot of emotional sequences. The family aspect is incredibly fun. And I like the way that you get endeared to the family throughout it. I think there's a good love story in it. And overall, I think that it's a very refreshing origin story. Yeah, some of the stuff is relatively basic. Same superpower versus same superpower in the final battle. But I thought it was good. I thought it worked really well. Alrighty, and coming in at number 4, we have Zack Snyder's Justice League movie. In my opinion, this is one of the few Zack Snyder movies that I actually enjoyed. I think that this movie was pretty good. I think that it's 4 hours long, so obviously, if you want to, spend an entire day watching a movie, you got it. This one's perfect for you. But I think that it does some really, really good things that we gotta kind of address here. I think that everything that they do with Cyborg's character in this is incredible. I think that the Flash's character development in this is incredible, and I think that there's a lot of really good action sequences, specifically with the Flash, where we get to see him running in super speed and what it would look like from a regular person's POV, which still to this day is, in my opinion, like the coolest speedster scene we have ever gotten. He also has his moment towards the end of the movie where he turns back time and he basically saves everybody. We get to see like the people like dematerializing or whatever, and then rematerializing whenever he brings time back. Incredibly cool concept. I think that this movie was a whole lot of fun, and if you are a diehard fan of the Justice League and of DC characters and you've wanted to see all these characters together on screen, this is a perfect movie for it. You get to see so many great action sequences that work incredibly well. I think that the sound design is great, the CGI is significantly better, and like I said, Cyborg's story in this movie alone makes it definitely worth the watch at least once. Now, coming in at number 3, we have, in my opinion, still the best female-led superhero movie. We have Wonder Woman. Personally, I really enjoy this movie. I think that it's great. I think that the love story between Steve Trevor and Diana Prince is incredible. And I love the way that she's kind of like a fish out of water, because she's never really had to deal with these social norms. She's never had to deal with like men existing, and she's never had to, try to fit into what society thinks women should be. And I think that that is incidentally like a really, really great commentary on how weird it is, how like society like affects women and stuff. And I think that there's a lot of sequences that I really like about it. I love the theme that she believes that human are good and human are naturally good, and that there's a war going on in the real world, and she doesn't believe that just men would do it. She knows that Ares has to be after it. And I love the fact that the entire movie, her and Steve Trevor are having this battle of like humans kind of suck a little bit, but she is just so optimistic, and she believes in humanity, and she wants to believe that there's a good built into all of us, which I love. And then there's a lot of great action sequences in this movie. There's a lot of like it's a great war film. Like all of the stuff with Dr. Poison or Dr. Death, I don't remember what her name is incredible. A lot of the sequences where they're just in the middle of the war is fantastic. It's a lot of the scenes where the ragtag bunch go into like a bar and they're like playing music and stuff like that. It is a very, very fun movie. And now, runner-up, coming in at number 2, we have the original Aquaman movie. Personally, I absolutely love this movie. I think that the action sequences are all incredible. I think that the CGI is fantastic. The world of Atlantis is beautiful in this. We get to see beautiful stadium fights where they are battling each other. They're fighting each other with tritons, which I think are incredibly cool. I think that Black Manta in this movie works incredibly well, and him being a secondary threat who's kind of posing more of a threat to him when they're on land, as opposed to Orm, who's being the threat when they're underwater, is really cool. I think that the sequences with the trench works incredibly well. I like the way that they build up the character of Arthur in this, and he's the only person who can talk to fish. He has a special bond that nobody else has really ever gotten or really understood. And when it comes to play in the final act of the movie, when he gets to talk to this creature who's been, guarding this thing for whatever, how many ever centuries, and then he gets the epic suit, which I will say this, the only thing that I will say that the DCEU has always gotten right is the comic accurate suits, and oh my god, he looks incredible in it. He looks so good. And then we go back to the underwater world for a final battle, which is just, once again, incredible. I loved everything about this movie. I think that this movie had incredible character development for Arthur, and I think that, like I said, CGI is fantastic, action sequences fantastic, it's incredibly funny, and there's a good love story in it as well. But yeah. But that all being said, we got coming in at number 1, the Suicide Squad movie. Personally, I absolutely love this movie, and this is just James Gunn doing what James Gunn does best, and probably the reason why he is now the head of the DCEU, or the DCU, because I think they're just gonna call it the DCU now. This movie is breathtaking. You take a group full of characters who are all incredibly weird, a bunch of misfits who not a lot of people ever heard of. Peacemaker was definitely not a name that people would have known before this movie. Bloodsport, not really a big shot character. I think a lot of people might have potentially known him because he does have some cool comic book panels where he's like doing his transitions and he's making cool weapons, stuff like that. Like, he is a pretty interesting character. And then you take some of the recurring characters like Rick Flag, make them a little bit more interesting. You bring back Harley Quinn and give her huge character arc and basically let her realize that she's an independent woman and she doesn't need love in her life again, which I think is a beautiful story for her. And then you bring in characters like Polka Dot Man. Love everything they do with Polka Dot Man. He's so weird, and I think that actor that plays him is absolutely incredible. And then you get Ratcatcher 2, Daniela Melchior absolutely kills that role, and I love this entire team so much because it is so much weird characters coming together. They all have their own different fears. They have their own battle sets that don't necessarily work relatively well with each other, and I just love it because they're going around fighting bad guys, not entirely sure what they're actually getting themselves into. They get themselves way in over their heads, and then by the end of the movie, they kind of make this decision that America is the bad guys, and that, you know, they need to actually save the day, and they become heroes more naturally in this movie than I think in the other Suicide Squad movie, and I really, really love it. I think that it's a great, great movie, and it has incredible dialogue, it has incredible storytelling, the character work is beautiful, and I really think that this just goes to show a movie that is character-driven will always outshine a movie that is spectacle-driven, and I feel like all of the Zack Snyder movies are basically built on, okay, here's these epic action sequences that are in slow motion for some reason, versus James Gunn, this character moment is going to be absolutely huge, and it's just because they're doing this thing, and then there's going to be a flashback to them and their dad, and it's a very emotional sequence explaining why they are the way that they are and why they have been the way that they are the entire movie. And it's beautiful. I love the Suicide Squad movie, and I hope we get to see more movies like it with the new DCEU coming out. But that being said, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. If you disagree with me, feel free to comment down below. I love to have discussions about these movies, and I love and appreciate you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow, bow, bow.
He wanted me to trouble first, I did this. He planned a day, and then we did this. Wanna be in love with the girls with the kisses. Don't give a damn, I'll rid this. I like this when I run the distance. I run to find hidden your ballistics. I wanna live within the business. Buy more than what's on the clearances. You're getting big cause I know you're a physicist. I wanna deny this shit, I'm unlimited.